Could you hold on real quick?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Sounds good to me. Okay, we're ready when you are.
I want to welcome everyone to the Carl Bragg Memorial Center. You see, we've been doing a lot of work on it to put the building back together. We have at least one member of the Carl Bragg Memorial Center board here today. That's David Lott. Raise your hand, Dave. And we have a volunteer out back, Fred Myros. I do want to recognize the Kentucky Alliance board members who are here. We have Dre Dawson in the back, one of our co-chairs. Tyra Walker, she may be moving to the front. One of our
we can be recognized.
so Tyra Walker, one of our co-chairs, board member
Treasurer.
Adelman, and our treasurer Tia Edison. Where is?
She's in the back.
Where's your hand, Tia? Board member Barbara Boyd and board member Greg Titchener, who's also with El Surge, and Ahamra, board member Ahamra. So yes, Brewster, yes. So thank everybody for coming. A variety of things we want to talk about today. There's been much talk about school resource officers before and after Uvalde. And where is the evidence that school resource officers succeed in making schools safer? There isn't any. I mean, there's been study after study. It just doesn't work. There have been millions and millions of dollars now in the past few years to hire school resource officers, and it's just not making schools safer. I mean, I have research here from the ACLU. I'm not going to read it. In 1975, 1% of schools were policed. Currently, 48% of schools are policed. And the truth is, I mean, you may have heard some of us saying it, but the truth is, when the police are in high poverty schools, they end up, arresting kids for just kid-like behavior and criminalizing children. So it's not something that actually works. When it comes to John Johnson came to Louisville to help Black folk. He didn't come to hurt anybody. John Johnson of the NFAC, sometimes known as Grandmaster Jay, was just convicted on what we considered non-serious charges. If John Johnson was actually considered to be a threat, why wasn't he arrested on the spot? The real question is, do Black people in America have the right to bear arms and to assemble in groups to protect themselves or not? That is the question. Now, going to United States Attorney for the Eastern and Western District, John Yarmuth, who is the representative from this area. It is his prerogative to suggest to Joe Biden who to pick. He is the Democrat. We have a Democrat president. And John Yarmuth has recommended the outstanding Jefferson Circuit Judge Brian Edwards for the Western District. And there's no reason why someone like Brian Edwards, who happens to be African American, who is very well respected, why that confirmation shouldn't come through in quick time. There's no reason for Mitch McConnell to be blocking that, in particular, on behalf of other folks that that are not that popular in the community, right? Now, who is blocking any progress on common sense gun regulations? The two senators from Kentucky. This is not conservatism, it's madness. I mean, there has to be some discussion on some kind of reasonable regulations. Now, this idea of U.S. Marshals serving run-of-the-mill local warrants. U.S. Marshals are not really prepared for everyday urban policing. It's not what they do. So this situation needs to be studied and perhaps revised. Now, I'd like to bring some other folk up to speak. Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring up some other folk. So Barbara Boyd, would you like to come up and speak on it? No problem. No problem. Gay Edelman, would you like to come up?
Thank you, K.A. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today to hear the voices that are left out of the conversation when money and power and privilege dominate all of the communication channels and airwaves. So we really appreciate the media that's here today and the live streamers, as well as the community coming out. My name is Gay Adelman. I serve on the Kentucky Alliance board, but I'm also the chair of the Coalition for the People's Agenda Education Committee. And so some of the things that we talk about, the Alliance is I just like to get this out of the way so that nobody accuses anybody of anything improper. The Coalition for the People's Agenda is a 501c4 under DRJCPS's LLC nonprofit, 501c4, and the Kentucky Alliance is a 501c3. So when I speak, if I say anything political, attribute it not to the Alliance, if you don't mind. So although I don't think that anything that we should be talking, I think making it political is actually one of the excuses that they like to use to shut us up. And most of the things that we're talking about are about lives. It's about civil rights, it's about human life, it's about dignity and respect. And if they want to say that we're making it political when we bring these things up, that's a game they play, and we have to call out the games they play. So I want to piggyback first on a couple of things that K.A. said. We were talking a little bit about public education and the threats that we currently face in our public schools. We have a lot of officers here today who are teachers as well in JCPS. And the narrative that they're going to try to spin with the situation in Uvalde, Texas, is that we need more policing and more policing. But we already know, we've been telling them we can't police our way out of this decades ago. And they didn't listen, and they continued to double down and double down and double down on the rhetoric. And at this point, we got to take the keys away. They can't drive anymore. We've got to take the keys away and fix this mess and hold people accountable for the lies that they've been telling, and make sure that we protect our elected seats. We have a school board race coming up this November. In addition to the other races that are on the ballot, there are 4 school board seats that are up for election. So James Craig, Corey Shull, Linda Duncan, and Diane Porter. All 4 of their seats are up. The deadline to file, if you want to run, if you live in those neighborhoods, in those districts, and you want to run for school board or know someone that should run for school board, the deadline to file is next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. And you're going to need a proof of high school graduation, as well as signatures of 2 registered voters. Make sure to check their registrations and make sure that they can't get you disqualified because they didn't renew their registration or got it erased, because they'll do that. And then get your paperwork turned in by next Tuesday. If you are considering running, Dear JCPS has a place on our website where we ask you to submit information so that we can counsel you and make sure you meet the criteria and even consider endorsing you if you're truly there to protect the seat. We know for a fact that there is someone planning on running in James's district that is one of those right-wing radicals that's been showing up at board meetings and telling everybody that masks are masks are the problem. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody knew that. I am going to talk briefly about Omari Cryer, and this display is. Do you want me to say that for you? You want me to do this? Okay. This display are weapons of racial trauma, weapons that the police and people in power have used historically to oppress people, right? So if you think back to the 60s, the reason they don't want CRT taught in our schools, they don't even want true authentic history taught in our schools, because we would recognize these patterns. They are currently taking political prisoners, and they are currently assassinating our leaders and our community members to send a chill. But also, I've got dollar signs here because gentrification is a big motivator. Snatch and grab, or whatever you want to call it. when they're breaking into people's homes, like the Vice expose revealed. Money drives a lot of this, and there's a lot of people in both political parties who who either aid and abet this or turn their backs on it. And so what we have to do is look for the patterns, because the DOJ is here doing a patterns and practices investigation, and I don't know if they took a nap or what, but I see them. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about Omari Cryer and how it all fits into the historical patterns of the past, these weapons that have been used. And we already know that police lie. And if somebody wants to challenge that and discredit everything else I have to say because they didn't believe the thing that I just said, these two simple words, police lie, do some more research. Go look at Brian Thurman, who was shot by LMPD in 2020, November of 2020, when the same night Travis Najdy was murdered, assassinated. We've got Travis up there too. They said that he was pulled over because the car had been reported stolen. But if you watch the body cam video, which they're counting on us not watching the video, but if you watch the body cam video, he's still calling in the plates. He's still calling in the license plates when he shoots and kills the driver of that car. They made up the story because that's what they do. They spin it and make up a story so that, the plausible deniability and all these things flood the airwaves, the communication channels that we don't have access to, so that even when we have it in front of us and we're like, look, people don't listen, people don't believe us, they're busy, they're distracted, on to the next thing. So we have to point it out while it's happening, just like they did with George Floyd. When we saw George Floyd getting murdered in real time, that was not, you couldn't explain that away. There was no denying that. And that's what we have here. We have a situation where they are not telling us everything, as you know. I mean, we don't even see the footage. We can't even see all the footage. So we know they're not telling us everything. But I would like to encourage you to question some of the words, like altercation. An altercation ensued. They still haven't answered us. What is an altercation? Did they interpret him turning this way when he saw one of the police officers and then going this way? Is that an altercation? Because that's probably what happened, because we walked the space. We walked the space. From now, keep talking. I still have 5 more minutes. Okay. So it is possible that just by turning, they called that fleeing when all he really had done was left the house, because the other person who lived there got a call that they were coming to do a probation check on the other young man who looks a lot like Omari. And so Omari went out a side door or a back door and crossed the alley. And when he stepped out, you can watch the video. Don't take my word for it, go watch the video. But you can see that there's a person standing there not running, that's a police officer. There's a person standing there not running, that's a police officer. So when he came out that backyard and saw someone here and saw someone here, he did exactly what they predicted he would do, and that was jump the fence. And they had someone waiting there. I can't prove it, but you know what? They can't prove the things they're saying either. So why can't we be the ones to say, prove me wrong? Prove me wrong. So after this precedent, I would like to encourage anybody who's still here. It's only like 5 blocks away, 5 or 6 blocks away. Let's walk down there. And 4 blocks away, even better. Let's walk down there and see for ourselves. And the media, I really would like to invite you and encourage you to do this with us as well. But here's what I really want to, and I'm about to wrap it up. Here's what I really want everybody to do. I want you to watch the police body cam video that they did share with us. Skip the first 2 minutes, which is all just their preamble of what they want you to see, gaslighting. Turn down the sound. Trust your eyes. Don't trust what they want you to see. Trust what you see. And tell me if you don't see a bullet wound in the chest right here that they ignore. They say there's 2 shots in the arm. This is my visual aid. The 2 shots in the arm had scatters around them, like maybe even from a different gun or a different range. I'm no expert on bullet wounds, but what the internet was able to show me, depending on how close you are to various things, there's a ring around it. So it has a raised lip if it's an entry wound. So this is more like what entry wounds would look like, I think. If somebody knows more than me, please help me decipher this video and make it public. This is the bullet wound in his chest. It's got, I call it a baby shark tooth. It's got sides on both sides and a little bit down the middle. And of course, it doesn't, it's really graphic, and I apologize. I so apologize for this, but we can't look away. They're counting on us to look away. It's got like maybe 3 tears in it, and as he's still with us, you can see it closing and then opening. So it's not there all the time, but it's there. And prove us wrong. Prove me wrong. If you watch the video and you see it, you can't unsee what you see. You can't unsee it. If you've already watched the video with the other stuff, I still think you'll see it. I think turn down the sound and just watch and see what your eyes see. And then let's hold some people accountable, okay? Let me just check my notes and make sure. They moved his gun and his feet. You see this on the video too. They tampered with the scene. You can even hear them trying to explain why they would have moved the gun. Like, put it down, like somebody accidents happen. Okay, we're supposed to take your word for it. There was a witness the day of the incident that said 3 shots, which would fit with this visual aid. So they're saying 2. I've heard from the police, both in the back and the front, like, which is it? And it's possible that the first shot was the shot through the back, and the other 2 were in the arm as he was rolling. And 2 different guns, 2 different proximities. I don't know. Maybe there was even a silencer. Maybe there really were only 2 shots, and maybe there was, I mean, we don't know. They have some explaining to do. They stopped the video. They stopped the video right when we were going to see the backside. Is there an exit wound? They said, like, conveniently stopped the video. There were at least 3 cops, 3 LMPD, so there should be at least 3 body cam videos. We need more information, and we have a citizens review board that should be looking at this as well. So I'm gonna wrap it up. I know there are other people who want to talk, and I apologize for taking so much time, but we've got to expose this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gay Edelman. I think I gave reference to the Vice News report. The Vice News did a report about the narcotics unit of the Louisville Metro Police Department. They would arrest people for drugs, and they would have a lot of cash on them, or they said they were arresting them for drugs. Some people were, I suppose, arrested but not convicted, but the police wouldn't turn in all the money. So it's kind of a minor scandal about evidently the police don't count the money on the scene and don't fill out the paperwork and record much smaller amounts. So, but this idea of vice cops in America, vice cops, the vices of prostitution, gambling, drugs, the vice cops generally run into a lot of cash in their work, and the idea of them keeping it is sort of as old as vice cops. Made even worse by asset forfeiture, which came in under Reagan, whereas the whole problem was, let's say you're driving through a small town, you're pulled over for speeding. You happen to be carrying a lot of cash. The small town cops keep the cash under the assumption that you may be doing drugs, and you have to go to court to get the money back. And that's whether or not you're arrested and convicted of a crime. That's what asset forfeiture is. Asset forfeiture means that a lot of police departments across the country have actually bought equipment with cash they have seized from people, and people didn't want to go to court, hire a lawyer to get the cash back. And so it's sort of related, asset forfeiture and cops keeping, pocketing, or not turning in cash when they detain or arrest people. So, that's what I believe they mentioned. There's a news organization also called Vice, and I think, was it Fernando? What's Fernando's last name? Roberto. But anyway, he did the report, and you can find it online in various places. YouTube Vice News. Yes. So, so who would like to come up next? David, did you want to say something?
I can wait until I was in
Barbara, you ready? All right, Barbara Boyd.
Right here. Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara Boyd. I'm a retired Jefferson County public school teacher. I am a past chair of the Kentucky Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression. And currently, I am the president of the Louisville branch of ASALA. ASALA is a national organization located, headquartered in Washington, D.C., with 48 branches throughout the United States. ASALA is an acronym for Association for the Study of African American Life and History. I am standing before you today because I'm really upset about the racial trauma that's going on in our city. Our young men are being gunned down by any means necessary. I heard a buzzword last week about the redemption. And people that are of white supremacy know what that redemption is. They do not want us here. Gentrification is the new word that comes in instead of urban renewal, because they don't want to tear down what's already here, but they want to build it up and make it better. We can't make it better because we don't have the ways and means, because all of our wealth has been stolen. Our wealth through slave labor, our wealth through education. Brown Brothers did something years ago, I think it was probably back in the late 60s, early 70s, when our people were putting lines on their cars. I forget what they call it, but it was just a white line. They were detailing it to make it kind of stand out. Brown Brothers started selling those Cadillacs with the detailed lines on it, and we got nothing. It's my belief that busing to put our children in neighborhoods that don't want them is to learn from us, because we are the original creators. I'm really upset about the way Amari Cryer was killed. When do we need the United States Marshals to come in and serve a warrant? What about the sheriffs? Sheriffs have always served warrants. They've served warrants from, I mean, you could go into any courtroom and that's their job. How much is it costing the taxpayers? How much is it costing the West Louisville taxpayers to bring someone in to kill us? The person that pulled that trigger on Amari Cryer, he was the person designated to serve the warrant with others. But he was also the jury, because he determined that that young man's life would be taken away right then and there. He didn't have a chance to go to court for a warrant for domestic violence. I have been in a situation, I would call it a domestic violence situation, and the police come to the house, and what do? They tell whoever is the aggressor, or usually the man, go walk around the block, cool off, and come back. They don't take a gun and decide. It's not like on TV. When you get shot, it's final. If you die, you're not coming back. Think about his parents. And I wanted to talk about we need to be able to determine our own policy. Today is one of the principles of Blackness, Kujichagulia, self-determination. We need to determine, and I think we have, I think all of us here are in agreement that the police did something wrong, that the United States Marshals did something wrong. And they need to show us how they came up with the determination to kill Amari. Power concedes power. And that is what they're doing. And I was something that's been bothering me for years, and I'm just gonna put it out there. How did we end up with the chief of police that we have? What made her qualified? I mean, we've got people dying from fentanyl overdoses. We got gun violence. People are getting shot every day. I think somebody got shot about 11 o'clock today in Portland. I had that come up on my phone. We are denied resources. The gentrification. It's almost like the Reconstruction era is coming all over again. And we need justice for Breonna. Until we get justice for Breonna Taylor, all of this is going to continue to happen. With Grandmaster, I think somebody mentioned his name is John Johnson. Was that Grandmaster?
Yes.
It kind of threw me off because a lot of us that are have been in the civil rights movement know John Johnson as the executive director of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. So don't get that twisted. It was not him. In fact, he has a wonderful museum in Franklin, Kentucky, and I was there for that opening. We have to make sure that the United States Marshals were here legitimately. With what's going on, you can't believe the Supreme Court because of the mess with Clarence Thomas and his wife, Jenny Thomas. And we cannot leave it up to the police to investigate themselves, because we already know that what's the definition of insanity? To keep doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. If the police investigate themselves, they are going to go free. That's insane. I haven't heard anything of this Police Citizens Review Board, and we need them to be accountable. We want to see the video that Gabe was talking about from the beginning to the end. And we want justice for Breonna Taylor. The pandemic has not ended, so we still have to be careful about that. You know, protect yourself, because as Angela Davis said, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things that I cannot accept. We cannot accept the decision of the Louisville Police Department regarding Amari Cryer. That's it.
Thank you, Barbara Boyd. Cheyenne, are you ready to come up? Say your name and
Sorry. My name is Cheyenne Oswella. I'm here speaking on behalf of Jordan Griffith's family. So these are the guidelines to follow when considering pursuing a police chase. 1, the potential for harm or potential danger to others if the fleeing individual evades or escapes immediate custody. 2, the seriousness of the offense committed or believed to be committed by the fleeing individual or individuals prior to the officer activating emergency equipment. 3, if the officer has a reasonable and articulable suspicion that the driver or an occupant of the vehicle in which they are fleeing represent a clear and present danger to public safety. 4, safety factors that pose a risk to peace officers, other motorists, pedestrians, or other third parties. 5, vehicular or pedestrian traffic safety and volume. 6. Weather and vehicle conditions. 7. Potential speeds of the pursuit. And 8. Consideration of whether the identity of offender is known and could be apprehended at a later time. Jordan Griffith didn't fall under any of these categories when he lost his life on March 2nd at the end of a police chase. Police officers had ample opportunity to arrest him before he ever entered a vehicle, and they chose not to. This police chase was unwarranted and totally against policy, and it ended in the loss of a life. The family still does not know how Jordan died. They have been given 0 details. They have asked for body cam footage and haven't been given that. They have asked to see the truck he was driving and have not been given that. They have asked for answers and haven't been given that. They didn't get to see Jordan's body until the day before his funeral, almost 3 weeks later. There were wounds on his body that weren't listed on his autopsy report, including a hole in his wrist that had been stitched up. His arm was out of socket. He had bruising on his feet, and the bullet hole that they told them was in his temple was towards the back of his head. All the family has asked to know is what happened to Jordan Griffith, and those questions have yet to be answered by LMPD. Jordan's mother and his daughters deserve to know the truth about why they will never see their dad again. We should be asking ourselves why LMPD has been so far from transparent in this case. In other cases that hasn't been so directly related to them, they have released it within a week. They have been sweeping it under the rug, and we don't even have any proof that Jordan had any warrants to warrant them arresting him that day. When you search up in the records, nothing comes up as far as any charges or warrants against Jordan. So I'll leave you with this question. What really happened to Jordan Griffith? Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. So this is Memorial Day, and we do a lot of symbolic things in remembrance of soldiers and veterans, but there are things that we can do that aren't symbolic. You know, we have sort of a very ad hoc healthcare system in this country, and that everybody who serves actually doesn't get veterans benefits. So one thing that would help, particularly with healthcare, is as if all National Guardsmen and Reserve, everybody who ever served in the National Guard and Reserve was eligible for VA medical benefits, because everybody who served in the National Guard and Reserves is not eligible for VA benefits or VA medical benefits. So there's certain twists in that law that would help a lot of people who have difficulty getting health care here in America. And it would be more than symbolic. So speaking of Memorial Day and veterans, there are people who have different concepts on that. And David Lott, share your views.
Thank you, K.A. So there's a phrase that we have all heard that is often spoken on Memorial Days. It's all gave some and some gave all. It's referring to those soldiers who were killed on other shores in U.S. wars. But on this Memorial Day weekend, we also want to honor the forgotten veterans, those killed in action on these shores in the midst of a different type of war. History calls it the Civil Rights Movement, but it was a war against oppression, a war against those defending white supremacy, a war against racist and political repression. It was a real war for freedom, not a manufactured war for liberty in the American way. And these names that I'm going to say are just a few of the names of those who were murdered in this war on freedom. First is Harriet and Harry Moore, the only couple murdered during the Civil Rights Movement. The Moores were killed on Christmas Day in 1955 when a firebomb was placed directly under their bedroom, which detonated with enough force to blow their bed up into the rafters of the home. Both of the Moores were educators and deeply involved in the NAACP, focusing especially on the issues of Black and white educator salaries and other issues. Later, Harry Moore moved his focus to a much more dangerous topic, police brutality, and lynchings. Due to their involvement in these issues, the couples lost their jobs in the schools, and then they later lost their lives. And then there was Reverend George Lee. Reverend Lee was murdered on May 7th, 1955 in Belzoni, Mississippi. Reverend Lee, one of the first Black people registered to vote in Humphreys County, used his pulpit and his printing press to urge others to vote. White officials were afraid of this, and they offered Reverend Lee protection if he would just quit his voter registration efforts. He refused, and he was murdered. And then there's Herbert Lee. He was murdered on September 25th, 1961 in Liberty, Mississippi. Herbert Lee, who worked with civil rights leader Bob Moses, who was a friend of the Kentucky Alliance years ago, to help register Black voters, was killed by a state legislator who claimed self-defense and was never arrested. Lewis Allen, a Black man who witnessed the murder, was also later killed. And then there was Corporal Roman Ducksworth Jr. He was murdered on April 9th, 1962 in Taylorsville, Mississippi. Corporal Roman Ducksworth Jr., a military police officer stationed in Maryland, was on leave to visit his sick wife when he was ordered off a bus by a police officer and shot dead. The police officer may have mistaken Ducksworth for a freedom fighter who was testing bus desegregation laws. And one of the more well-known names of those who were assassinated was Jimmy Lee Jackson. He was murdered on February 26, 1965 in Marion, Alabama. Jimmy Lee Jackson was beaten and shot by state troopers as he tried to protect his grandfather and mother from a trooper attack on civil rights marchers. His death led to the Selma Montgomery March and the eventual passage of the Voting Rights Act. And finally, there was Viola Gregg Liuzzo, who was murdered on March 25th, 1965 on the Selma Highway in Alabama. Ms. Liuzzo was a white housewife and mother from Detroit. She drove alone to Alabama to help with the Selma March after seeing televised reports of the attack at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. She was ferrying marchers between Selma and Montgomery when she was shot and killed by Klansmen in a passing car. These are just some of the victims of that other war that is being waged. The war against racist and political repression, the war for democracy and freedom that continues to today, that we're seeing with these names behind us. As if we needed a reminder, Buffalo told us that. Amari Cryer told us that. And it is a war that the Kentucky Alliance will continue to fight until justice is won. Not just accountability, but justice.
Thank you, David. Just want to note that sometimes people get killed because certain folks are simply given the wrong assignment. That is, David McAtee killed by a National Guardsman bullet. There was no reason for the National Guard to be at that corner on that night. There just wasn't any need for it. And Amari Cryer died from a U.S. Marshal's bullet. We don't know that the U.S. Marshals were necessary in that situation. So sometimes people are killed because people are given the wrong assignment. So Greg Titchener of L-Surge and the Kentucky Alliance Board.
Okay. It is time for Louisville and America to chart a new course, one that centers on creating opportunities for all its citizens, but especially the communities that have been historically neglected by our country and our society. For this to happen, there has to be a collective change in mindset on how we view our inequities and how best to address them long term. Too many of those in power see police as a necessary evil and struggle to see a viable solution beyond the law and order approach that has for far too long dominated our political thinking in this country. To get past this mindset, one must have a vision that doesn't center punitive solutions, but rather focuses on long-term proactive ones. Normalizing police in schools stands as one of these law and order mindset policies that needs to be challenged. Far too many of my middle school students have already had a negative interaction with police, and having police present with weapons and uniforms within the school buildings is not a positive step forward for all of our students. In fact, from a racial trauma perspective, their presence may delay the healing that needs to happen. For 50 years, we have seen the U.S. prison population rise to the point that we are considered one of the world capitals for incarcerated per capita. We are hearing legislators demand a return to in-person schooling before high-stakes testing scores require us to build new prisons. We cannot continue to accept these punitive solutions as the path forward to the beloved community we all deserve. The time has come to try something else. We are creating more problems than we are solutions right now. The long-term impact of imprisonment on the intergenerational development of a family cannot be understated. And then we want to blame the single parents who have to work 2 full-time jobs in order to keep the lights on and food on the table as the source of the problem when their children struggle. Mass incarceration and police killings like the case of Amari Cryer must end for us to move forward with a healing focus.
Okay, Edelman has a couple more words.
Real quick. So since we're here, and I just want to say a couple more things about, we mentioned John Yarmouth. John Yarmouth is a lifetime member of the Kentucky Alliance. He had an opportunity to endorse a Black woman for the primary and didn't. And so I want to be careful we don't raise him up too much for doing the right thing now, because this could be one of those, well, look, I did this, you know, because that's a white supremacy thing. So I just want to put that out there. We have to watch for these patterns. And speaking of patterns and practices, some of the things that David mentioned historically, whether they were from the civil rights movement or the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or today, the patterns and parallels are still continuing. And as you spoke, the blowing up of the bedroom was the same thing that they did to the Wades. And Ann Braden is one of our co-founders back in the 70s. This organization was founded because of white supremacy and people blowing up the bedroom of the Wades, which Ann and Carl had tried to help them buy a house in Shively neighborhood. And that's how they were treated, just for buying a house, which they're legally entitled to do. Like, this is the war that's been going on. And it's not just, they don't always, not only do they not always get the assignment, they don't always kill their victims, but the trauma is still there. And Angela Davis was a political prisoner, just like Grandmaster Jay and Quintez Brown and others. And so we've got a wall full of names here of assassins and victims of assassinations and political prisoners that have been executed by our police or our legal system. And the system is broken. That's structural racism. We have to dismantle structural racism. We don't want to say another name. Thank you.
That concludes our media event for today. Any questions? That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Meet me by the sign if you want to come with us over to the Sutcliffe Avenue address.